Hi everyone, Jeff here. I hope that you and your families had a great holiday and break. Hi everyone, Jeff here. I hope that you and your families had a great holiday and some time off to enjoy each other's company and kind of rejuvenate your batteries. As we get back into the swing of things here at school, one of the primary things that's discussed this time of year is our program of studies and potential changes moving forward. So, what I wanted to do is to share a brief presentation with all of you, just to discuss some of the changes that I'm interested in making or directions I'm interested personally in heading in. But seeing as to how the program of studies is a shared document for the entire building, I do want to just present the ideas to everyone via this video and give you some opportunities to talk about where I'm going and what this conversation is amongst one another so that we can collectively decide as a building, is this representative of a direction that we want to head in, or is this not? And if so, where do we go forward from there, and how do we move forward with this upcoming program of studies? So that being said, as you can see, the title of this presentation is Ensuring Success for All Students, Class Rank, Grade Weighting, and Related Considerations. My thought process is once we come together on some sort of a consensus, or at least majority vote on what this looks like for us as a school community, whether that means remaining the same or changing practices, that I can share this with the school committee, and we can publish the new document. So that being said, to begin the conversation, I apologize if I'm being a little bit remedial to start, but I want to make sure that we have a shared understanding of what I mean by different definitions, and also some of my observations in the first couple of months of being here at Middletown and things that I think we need to prioritize as a school community. So that being said, you can see that our mission statement is at the top of this page. Middletown High School is an educational community committed to providing the academic, civic, and social tools essential for the future success of our students. So the primary goals, moving forward, things that I feel as though we should focus on from the main office perspective. I think we need to improve our four-year graduation rate. While it is fairly high, I think that we can do better with this metric, and there are a variety of ways that we can discuss doing that. In addition to improving our four-year graduation rate, I think improving student engagement and connectivity over the course of the past couple of months, and also with the SurveyWorks data from last year, it seems as though student engagement and connectivity and students feeling connected to the building is an important piece that we need to focus on. It seems as though it's dipped in the last couple of years, and that's something that, quite frankly, we can't afford to have dip. And then finally, determining the unapologetic identity of our programming. We have a lot of different initiatives and things going on here at Middletown, which is a great thing. But the component of that where it becomes difficult is at what point are we doing a lot of things good and few things great? And is there an opportunity to do more things great and get rid of some of the things that we might not be passionate about, or maybe have run their course? So that's another conversation that I would like to have moving forward. Maybe not necessarily for the program of studies, but kind of as an overarching guiding light for this presentation. So to start what I'm speaking about here in this presentation, we start with class rank and GPA, and then we talk about benefits of a paradigm shift, dispelling myths, and my proposal. You'll notice it's framed as our proposal, but that's because this is a draft presentation that I'm sharing with you first. Eventually, I would like this to represent, the general gist of how we feel as a building. And knowing that we won't get there in all likelihood 100%, but if we can use this document to best, represent what we believe and feel is right as a school community, I think that everybody will benefit. So starting with the introduction. Again, with our common definitions, in many comprehensive public high schools around the country, students are ranked in accordance with their grade point averages in their graduating classes. So if we have a graduating class of 150 students, the valedictorian is usually labeled number 1, the salutatorian is number 2, and then we numerically rank students all the way down through number 150. A lot of times in many high schools, I believe here included, the top 10 students receive specific accolades and recognition. And in some other schools, there are different bands or deciles of students with grade point averages that receive alternative recognition or accolades. So that's something that we're speaking about when we talk about class rank. Certain benchmarks, as I just mentioned, the top 10, top 25, certain percentages, students are recognized and receive accolades, awards, and college post-secondary transcript boosts. To determine the ranks at MHS, the way that we figure out students' grade point averages, we calculate them using a weighted grading system to the fourth decimal place. So to figure out the difference between one step to the next, you'll notice that it might be a grade point average of 3.4566 to 3.4567. My question that I pose to the school community is, does this practice accurately represent our best and brightest students? There's a plethora of research out there that demonstrates that while the valedictorians are good at the quote unquote game of school, there are an overwhelming number of high school valedictorians that do not end up being the most successful students in their class, or the most successful people in their graduating classes. That's not to take anything away from that academic achievement. To be a valedictorian, a salutatorian of over 100 students or more is really an unbelievable, testament to how hard that student has worked. As also, their brain power, their intelligence, their intellect, their drive. There's a lot that goes into that. I'm not taking anything away from valedictorians or salutatorians, but I just asked the question, like I said, are we really accurately ranking who should be honored and maybe who should not be honored all the way down to the 10,000th place in the decimal column, the fourth place in the decimal column? Currently, that's our practice. So benefits of making the change. My proposal is to completely eliminate class rank, to get rid of it. And it starts here. Does the calculation to the 10,000th decimal place accurately depict who's the smartest in a particular grade? By eliminating class rank, an additional benefit is that we're promoting intrinsic motivation and love of learning over extrinsic rewards. What's meant here, and one of the arguments against having class rank, and weighted GPAs for that matter, is that they become a focal point for academically energized students, which is a good thing. But in all reality, Daniel Pink is a big researcher that speaks about this with his book Drive, right? It's the idea that intrinsic motivation is really what sticks with people, and that love of learning and that love of particular subject matter or an occupation, etc., is really what sticks with kids and adults in general. And those extrinsic rewards like money or trophies or things of that nature tend to work in the short term, or for remedial tasks, but not for complex, collaborative thinking tasks. So by getting rid of class rank and by potentially getting rid of weighted grading, my argument would be that you're diminishing or decreasing the extrinsic rewards, and you're focusing primarily on the intrinsic rewards that we're promoting here in the building. And then finally, with class rank, anytime anything is ranked like this, we all know that there's a competitive component to that. Again, I'm an athletic guy. That's not to say that I don't think that healthy levels of competition are okay. I think that especially amidst a COVID pandemic environment where stress is already super high, adding to the stress levels of people by, am I number 10 in the class or number 11 in the class? And so has me beat by 10 hundredths of a point, and I absolutely need to make the top 10, or I absolutely need to make the top 20 to get into the college I want. I don't know if those are stress levels that we need to kind of continuously impose on students. Not to mention that large numbers of high schools, particularly in Massachusetts, but in Rhode Island and Connecticut as well as around the country, have more and more and more and more been moving away from class ranking. So what's the return on our investment? The NACAC, which is the National Association of Admissions Counselors, of College Admissions Counselors, they routinely report that class rank is approximately the 10th most important factor in determining college admissions. Things that are rated above class rank on their list of what matters, quote unquote, is students demonstrating their interests, extracurricular activities, teacher and counselor recommendations. All of these fall in line well above class rank. So what basically we're seeing is that colleges are reporting around the country that class rank really isn't a major factor in determining student admissions to post-secondary institutions. Another benefit of making the change is we get rid of unnecessary or unneeded metrics. We get to trim the fat, so to speak, from some of our programming. And I want to be clear that I'm not asking to totally get rid of any type of accolades or recognitions for students that are high performing. What I'd like to do instead of class rank, which essentially in most cases values the top 10, all right, the top 10 students are represented in a specific way and that everybody else is represented in another way. I would recommend replacing the top 10 or replacing these types of accolades with a Latin honor system, similar to what many colleges or most colleges use around the country. They rank students in 3 different categories: summa cum laude, magna cum laude, and cum laude. There are a lot of public and private high schools that are moving towards this system, and one of the major reasons is that we'd be able to acknowledge and award and provide positive feedback to a much larger number of students than 10. So one of the things that I'm proposing is potentially, instead of honoring, number 1 through 10, or number 10 through 20 is a certain number in the class, a Latin honor system might allow us to honor anywhere between 20 to 50 graduating students, where, say, the top 10% of students receive a summa cum laude recognition with their transcript, or the students who fall between the 20th percentile and the 30th percentile of their class receive a magna cum laude. And those numbers obviously are arbitrary and can be adjusted as to what we think as a school community is appropriate. But the general gist of what I'm trying to get across is eliminating this individualized 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 type of class rank in favor of a Latin honor system that honors more students in a wider swath of grade point averages. The next thing that I'd like to present after talking about potentially removing class rank is, in most comprehensive public high schools around the country, students' grade point averages are calculated on a scale of 0 to 4.0. Each final course letter, A, B, or C, is tied to a number between 0 and 4, right? The cumulative average of these grade-based numbers are what makes up a student's GPA. So an A might be worth a 4.0. A B might be worth a 3.0, a C a 2.0, etc. And the pluses and minuses in between would then be decimal points. So a B plus might equal a 3.66, as it does here at the high school, or a C plus might be the equivalent of a 2.66 or something of that nature. So I know that we've had continuous discussions, or at least in the beginning of the year, we had rather, lively discussions, which was awesome, about grading, assessment, and what we think as a school is the most appropriate way to track learning. But one of the questions that did arise in those conversations, and routinely does when we talk about traditional versus standards-based grades, is what value does each grade receive? So in a GPA format, we're essentially quantifying the letters that we're giving to students. An A is a 4.0, a B is a 3.0, etc. Here at Middletown High School, we have 2 types of GPA. We have unweighted and weighted GPA. And for many schools across the country, that's how they do things. Here, if you take, say, a college prep level course, so I'm just going to throw one out there. Let's say I take regular biology. If I get an A in regular biology, then I have a 4.0 in that class. That class is one of 7 that I'm taking. So that class, along with the 6 other classes I take, the numerical average will be taken, and that's what my GPA essentially will be. And you can see here at Middletown High School how that breaks down for us. What letter grade is associated with what numerical grade for the course, which is associated with what grade point average grade. Different high schools do this one differently. Some don't weight grades at all. So every class letter grade is worth every other class letter grade, no matter if you're taking an AP course or a home repair and maintenance course or a human body systems course or an intro to art course. Doesn't matter. If you have an unweighted grading system across the board, every A is equal to a 4.0. Every B is equal to a 3.0. When you have a weighted grading system like we have here, certain classes that are decided as having more rigor have a larger impact on a student's GPA. So for us, if you take an AP course, or if a student takes an AP course and they get an A, on our weighted grading scale, that student doesn't get a 4.0, they would get a 5.0. So if I took AP English versus a student that might take English 11 in general, and they both get an A, the AP English student will enjoy a benefit of having a 5.0 GPA, while the English 11 student who's not in the AP program, or even the English 11 honors student who's not in the AP program, would receive a 4.0. So let's take a look at how that breaks down a little bit. These are two hypothetical students. I just picked some pictures offline, but let's pretend that this student is a grade 11 student, Sarah L., and this is her final grade report card at the end of her 11th grade year. To the right are the GPAs that are associated with each of her letter grades. Notice that Sarah did take an AP course, so she did receive a GPA bump here, whereas if it was a regular level course or a college prep level course, it would be a 2.66. But because it's an AP course, it's a 3.66. When you do the numerical communication here, or the computation, excuse me, you'll notice that her total weighted GPA, which is what we would utilize here in Middletown, is 3.519. If we weren't doing a weighted GPA and this AP US History measured as much as a regular US History class, her GPA would be a 3.376. Compare that to Lauren S., another hypothetical student. She has no AP classes, so she has basically all unweighted grades. When you do her numerical calculations, her total weighted GPA and total unweighted GPA would be the exact same, because once again, she doesn't take an AP class or multiple AP classes. Lauren S.'s final grade point average for the junior year is 3.473, slightly below our first student. So what's crazy to me here, or what sticks with me a little bit, it's not crazy, but it sticks with me, is despite having similar classes, similar grades, both making the dean's list, and the first student, Sarah L., having an additional B- grade that Lauren S. doesn't, Sarah L. does have the greater GPA and would be higher in class rank than the second girl, Lauren S. This is because of the advanced placement course in her schedule. So there's a couple of reasons why this one sticks with me. My proposal, and again, there will be shared opinions on this, as there should be. My proposal would be to get rid of weighted GPA and to have an unweighted GPA of 0 to 4.0 for all courses across our offered curriculum, no matter the quote-unquote difficulty or rigor level. And I'll give you some of the reasons why I believe that. My biggest reason is because I think all kids should have a shot at being the valedictorian, salutatorian, or receiving distinction in their class. The argument can be made that when students enter this building in their freshman year, if they are not of the intellectual caliber or they're not receiving recommendations to be in AP courses, they have absolutely no shot at finishing in the top 10% of their class. Numerically, it's impossible. You have to be involved in our AP programming because you have to get those grade point average bumps to be competitive to the 10,000th place of a decimal point. So in looking at the numbers for the class of 2020, to have a shot at being in the top 10% of this graduating class, a student will have had to take at least 4 AP classes over the course of their junior and senior years. That's a lot. If they did not take 4 AP classes, they have a minuscule chance of cracking the top 10, and they have absolutely no chance at being in the top 5. So what does that mean? Translated a little bit further out, zoom a little bit further out. To have a shot at being in the top 20% for this graduating class, a student will have had to take at least 3 AP classes over the course of their junior and senior years. That's still a lot. So what that means is that approximately 80 to 85 students, almost half of the graduating class, haven't had a shot at finishing in the top 5% of their class for the past 2 years. By the end of the sophomore year, beginning of the junior year, when that schedule is set, we're already locking students into where they would be class rank-wise and where they would be GPA-wise. For me, that I just have a hard time with that. The other component of that I'll maybe talk about a little bit later, and I know I'm jumping ahead here, is the idea of we promote CTE programming, career and technical education programming here at the high school. But keep in mind that CTE programs or classes in the CTE programs, pathways, do not provide students with a grade point average bump. So it's kind of an either or game in a lot of circumstances, because let's face it, there's only so many course sections, offered. If I really want to be in the engineering pathway, I could potentially be sacrificing the opportunity to be in specific AP courses in other general education programs out in the building. And that could also be sacrificing my ability to get a high class rank or a high weighted GPA. If we had an unweighted GPA, I wouldn't be forced to make that decision as a student. And for me, that speaks a whole lot louder to what students are genuinely interested in and the path of study that they want to follow while they're here at Middletown High School. So that leads a little bit into the benefits of making the shift of moving from a weighted GPA to an unweighted GPA. Students will be able to take courses that interest them without having to worry about lowering their GPA. I don't have to worry about taking an art class anymore because most, not all, but most art classes don't offer a GPA bump. I mentioned the CTE class issue as well just a minute ago, but that also corresponds to things like unified arts, music, etc. The idea is that students will take courses at an appropriate level of challenge without GPA value influencing their choices. We do have some families in our school community, just like all schools do, that I might not necessarily be interested in AP US history, but a savvy family who has college-educated parents or people who are aware of this GPA bump may force or push their students into these AP courses that they might not necessarily be ready for, because a B- in an AP course is just as good as an A- in a college prep course. So in essence, I have more buffer, I have more leeway to score lower in AP class and not receive a GPA, bump, a GPA knockdown, I guess you would say. So the idea is that if there's no GPA bump associated with these upper level courses, students might not necessarily put themselves in stressful situations early in the school year just to receive that GPA that they feel as though they need. One of the things that we have on our mission statement and our district mission statement is the idea of valuing all students equally. This move that I'm talking about with an unweighted GPA is a literal representation of valuing all students equally. As I mentioned earlier, there are students that have IEPs, there are students that have 504s, there are students with where they're learning English as their second or third language. Many of these students don't have a shot to be high in their class right from jump, right when they walk into the building, because the current system that's in place. And I want to be clear, it's in place in a lot of high schools. It's not just Middletown High School. Most high schools, in fact, have a similar program to what we're doing right now. I'm challenging that mantra. Also, this could serve as a release valve for student stress and other avoidable social emotional concerns brought on by unnecessary levels of academic pressure. Again, I'm fairly new to this school community, but in my previous experiences, some of the students that you would never think of as having social emotional issues or feeling those pressures or had a million things going for them were some of the students that were most at risk for behaviors like cutting, eating disorders, socially unhealthy relationships, because they put so much pressure on themselves to have 4 AP courses or 5 AP courses in their schedule that they maybe couldn't have handled, or their parents really pushed for them to have specific APs so that they could be at the top of the class, when in reality the student didn't want to or wasn't ready for it. And unfortunately, some of those negative emotions manifested in really junky ways. So my hope is that by going to an unweighted GPA, it's not reducing the rigor of our academic program in any way, shape, or form, but it's giving students permission to pursue the courses that they're most interested in. So there's definite concerns that come up with this, and it's not a panacea. There's negatives to this as well as positives. That being said, some of the more common concerns that get brought up with this, I do want to kind of just address. Obviously not going to be able to cover everything. The first question: will this shift put Middletown High School students at a competitive disadvantage when applying to colleges and universities? As you can see the answer here, while the entry requirements vary greatly from institution to institution, the general and growing consensus is that weighted GPAs are becoming more and more a thing of the past. Colleges place much heavier emphasis on things like the strength of overall transcript, student growth, student resume, and the sending school's reputation than on any high school specific GPA calculation or formula. This is 100% true. I have some information here that I'll share with you in the slides so you can click on as well. But following right along with this general consensus, we have to keep in mind that there are so many different models of public education and private education around the country. Homeschool students don't have the same type of transcript when they go to apply to a college that we would give a student here at Middletown High School. That doesn't necessarily mean that a homeschool student is at a disadvantage to Middletown High School. St. George's, which is an elite private institution right around the corner from us, sends a very sparse programmatic profile to colleges. Now, granted, their school reputation precedes itself, whereas many public institutions don't have that advantage. There's also the component there that different schools send different information to colleges, and students get in relatively successfully across the board. Standards based is something we've spoke about grading wise here for a little while at the beginning of the year, and from my understanding, extensively in previous years. And standards based transcripts look completely different than traditional letter based and number based transcripts. Those students still get into highly prestigious colleges and the colleges of their choosing. So realizing the amount of vast variability around how transcripts are presented to colleges, I think that's a key component, because we tend to get locked into well, how are our students going to compare? How are their transcripts going to compare to a Portsmouth high school or a Rogers high school or a Jamestown? Well, Jamestown doesn't have a high school, but a North Kingstown high school, etc. Transcripts look very different from institution to institution, and colleges do have to navigate this. And in many times, colleges throw out weighted grades, and they have their own grading calculations anyway, because of all these differences. So here's some actual narratives from the admission departments from several of the country's most competitive post-secondary institutions relating to weighted GPAs. So these were questions that were actually asked by Wayland High School. I had been in correspondence with them last year rather extensively. They've done a lot of work on weighted versus unweighted GPAs. They've since moved to unweighted GPAs. They'll be doing that, I believe, next year is the first year that they'll be starting with that practice. But you can see some of the answers that their guidance department received from Stanford. Please note that we receive transcripts from thousands of schools that have different ways to calculate the GPA. Stanford considers a student's entire academic record, not simply the GPA. Your school will report a GPA in whatever way they choose, but the evaluation in the admission office considers strength of program, trends in achievement, levels of accomplishment, and so forth. Our review of the transcript is holistic. MIT. Please don't be overly concerned about if your school has weighted or unweighted GPAs. With our holistic admissions process, we're much more interested in how an applicant fits with our current culture than if they were the number one in their school or how they size up to applicants from other schools. Interesting aside about MIT, they don't grade freshmen at MIT. Freshmen don't receive grades. You only receive numerical grades when you get into your sophomore year. Trinity College. The most important academic trends for us to see in our candidates are performance over time and academic rigor within the context of the school. As such, there is no advantage or disadvantage when it comes to whether or not a GPA is weighted or unweighted. Cornell University. We do not have a preference as to whether a school chooses weighted or unweighted GPAs. We look at how the applicant has challenged themselves within the academic rigor offered at their institution. We look at this information in conjunction with the applicant's test scores, recommendation letters, service to community, and writing samples. Dartmouth College. You should make a decision based on what's best for your students in their day-to-day academic lives. You can remove any anticipated impact on college outcomes from your consideration. So if you're still not sure, I have a survey linked here, and as I know that this is a webinar, so you can't really click it, but the results here were collected by Wayland High School, as I mentioned earlier, in early 2018. Many of the results were verified by Weston High School, which is a top 10 high school in Massachusetts, in late 2018, as they were moving towards that direction. And my previous institution had started to talk about this as well, although it was tabled. All 110 surveyed post-secondary institutions responded that leaving weighted GPAs off transcripts would not hurt a student's chances at being accepted to their institution. So this survey here is clickable. I'll try to provide the link in the description below. If not, I can share the presentation with everybody anyway. So here is the NACAC most recent college admissions top factors. Every year they put forth a report. Again, the NACAC is, I'm going to mess this up. It's the National Admissions Counseling Association for Colleges. I think that's right. I might have gotten the words wrong, but that's the general gist. The top factors in deciding what is important for getting high school students admitted to college. You can see down the list. This is the most recent survey as of 2018, 2019. The most important component is grades across all courses. And then finally, grades in college prep courses. Notice the little difference between these two numbers. Strength of curriculum. So essentially, on our school profile, we offer colleges what are our most challenging courses, and they can then measure up what students have taken versus what those courses are. Strength of curriculum is there. And then admissions testing scores, although they have been decreasing over recent years, are still in the top 4. After these top 4, you'll see a noticeable drop off with the most important factors. If you consider the top 2 most important factors, those numbers change slightly, but it gives you an idea of what is most important to these institutions. Okay. I did a 5-year aggregate of these documents, these reports. So this is what you're looking at right now. Notice that the year 2016 was in existence. I couldn't find it. So to be realistic, I just continuously searched on Google. The others were very easily found. I have no reason why 2016 was a ghost, but I didn't want to misrepresent the data, so just want to draw your attention to that. So from 2015 to 2019, skipping over 2016, you can see where these different admissions criteria fell for colleges across the country. If you want to take an extra long look at it, you can pause the video. But you'll notice, as I mentioned before, there's a very clear distinction between the top 4 most important items and the rest. Okay. So question number 2, won't this negatively impact our highest performing students? Since they're not receiving a GPA bump, what's the incentive for taking high-level coursework? So my answer to that, as indicated above, college admissions is still heavily dependent on the level of rigor associated with students' individual transcripts, regardless of their numerical GPA. Students with more rigorous courses are often looked on more favorably by college admissions staff. So it doesn't mean that students shouldn't be taking more rigorous courses. On the contrary, the strength of transcript is one of the primary things that colleges are looking at. The grade that students receive in those courses is a little bit of a different story. So while the numerical bump and related competition may not be present, it's still in students' best interest to challenge themselves to an appropriate level within the context of the course being offered. This, for me, is an example of community outreach and being able to dispel myths that are out there. Being able to educate the community, students, parents, and otherwise, about the importance of taking a rigorous course schedule, but doing so within one's means, demonstrating growth, following a path of inquiry that you're supremely interested in, and then having that enjoyment of learning throughout. I think all of that reflects positively, as you can see, on college admissions and on students' school experience as well, without having to worry about the numerical averages that are associated with what I would argue are arbitrary letter grades. But we could have that standards-based conversation at another time, right? Will removing the weighted GPA have an impact on students' scholarship opportunities? So this is one. In nearly all cases, students would not be negatively affected when seeking scholarships. Most scholarships do depend on unweighted GPAs. However, there is one major exception, and there's probably multiple minor exceptions to this. The major exception is the National Merit Scholarship Program, which does take into account weighted GPAs as part of their criteria. So to be some of the highest scoring students in the National Merit Program, students should be receiving weighted criteria. And there's a lot of scholarship money tied to that. So that's important to know. In recognition of this, I would propose continuing to record weighted GPAs, but keeping them in-house for this scholarship program and others that have similar requirements only. So essentially what I'm saying is we would still keep a weighted GPA here at Middletown High School, but we would not report our weighted GPA out on our transcripts to go out to colleges. Only the unweighted GPA would be expressed out. Our weighted GPAs would be used when it benefits our students in scholarship opportunities. We would have those numbers here stored in the guidance office, but it would not be shared with post-secondary institutions. So where does that all leave me? So I'm starting by proposing beginning with the incoming freshman class, which would be the class of 2025. Our primary method of tracking GPA at Middletown High School will be using an unweighted GPA system based on a 4.0 scale. Only unweighted GPA will be reported on student transcripts. So I'm saying that my proposal would be with the incoming freshman class, we would no longer be assigning a GPA bump for AP courses. That would go away. That's my proposal. For students that are currently matriculated here at Middletown High School, they would be operating under the same system that they always have been operating under, that they would be receiving AP course GPA bumps. So nothing would change for our currently enrolled students. We've kind of, I think, agreed to have a specific academic program for them, and I think we need to hold to that. The question really becomes, with the incoming freshmen, are we interested as a school community in making a shift? And that's what this presentation predominantly has been about. For all current Middletown High School students, the same methods of unweighted and weighted GPA will be used as presented upon their entry to their high school program. That's what I just described. I mentioned a minute ago that weighted GPAs would still be calculated for each student, but will remain in-house. These weighted GPAs will only be used in support of a student who chooses to participate in the optional merit scholarship programming, which happens predominantly in the junior year. Also, any other peripheral scholarships that would benefit a student to use weighted GPA, we would have those numbers on file and be able to give them there as well. To get back to the beginning of the presentation, I would like to eliminate the outward reporting of class rank. Class rank can be kept in school, but again, would remain in-house for only determining the class valedictorian and salutatorian, so number 1 and number 2 of the class. I would also propose that number 1 and number 2 are decided upon on an unweighted scale, not weighted, unweighted scale. This would give every student in the building an opportunity to potentially be their class salutatorian or valedictorian. Right now, we cannot say that. There's just not a possibility. Okay, back. Our CTE students are at a disadvantage. Our students with special needs are at a disadvantage. Our students that are in college and preparatory level courses, because they may not have a strength in one area while they have a strength in other areas, or disadvantages. It just, like I said, I'm not comfortable with that. That sits rough for me. So I would eliminate class rank. I would propose replacing a class rank honors system with a collegiate Latin honors system. Honors bands could look something like as follows, although I'm open to conversation around this one, as I am with everything else, but this one especially. Summa cum laude might be unweighted GPAs of 3.8 or above. Magna cum laude could be unweighted GPAs of 3.5 to 3.79. And cum laude could be unweighted GPAs of 3.25 to 3.49. I also think that we need to do away with the 10,000th place decimal, because I don't think that we can accurately distinguish between an 11th ranked learner that has a 3.4999 versus a 10th ranked learner that has a 3.4998. I just think that that's too thin of a margin to be able to accurately, assign the rewards that come with those ranks. Graduation speeches will be delivered by 2 democratically elected members of the graduating class. Students would apply for this privilege and would need to be approved by faculty prior to delivering their speeches. These 2 speeches would replace a valedictorian and salutatorian speech at graduation. This is something I haven't discussed previously in the presentation, but once again, getting back to, I have a strong interest in giving every student in this building a shot to speak at graduation. As it exists right now, that's not a possibility. There are students that are in the life skills room. There are students that are in some of the special education programming, or ELL students that, because of the course schedule they're required to take, do not have a shot at a graduation speech. I would much rather prefer the students to decide in unison with the faculty what students best represent a class, what type of message do they want to send on the way out, and to not lock that into an academic GPA. I've concluded the presentation with a variety of resources. These are mostly class rank and grade weighting resources. Feel free, again, they're mostly linked, to click on them when I do share this presentation with you. This is a start to the research that we could continue to discuss related to benefits of making these changes. Full transparency, there's definitely research that also speaks against making these changes. And I'm sure that there's a varied opinion amongst people watching this webinar, again, which there should be. So my thought process is as follows. What I'd like is to have conversations in our PLC groups around where you personally stand with these three options. With the class rank, get rid of it or keep it. With grade weighting, have an unweighted GPA or a weighted GPA, or both. And also the speeches at graduation. Do the valedictorian, salutatorian, are they locked in as being the speech deliverers for a graduation speech for an outgoing class? Or would we prefer to have democratically elected students do these presentations? Or is there some other mechanism that works better? So as I had mentioned before, anything in this survey anything in this webinar, is not set in stone. Everything is up for discussion. I do want to continue to talk about it. If we can come to a majority consensus, there's a presentation that we're slotted to make, the administration and department directors, to the school committee on January 21st. If we're able to come to a consensus on changing or recommending a change for any of these items, then I would be proposing that with the department directors on January 21st of this year, like 2 weeks from now. If we can't come to a majority consensus on any of these items, I wouldn't move forward with the suggestion. I would put it on hold, and I would give us more time to speak about it. My preference would be to move ahead with these changes, but again, I do not want to force them on you. These should be things that are representative of our school community and things that we, generally speaking, knowing that we're not going to get to 100%, believe are in the best interest of students and best represent our paradigm for education here at Middletown High School. So like I said, if we can continue to have conversations around this, I'll give you a little bit more detail on the time frames for these conversations and also how I'm going to ask for feedback. That will happen within the next few days or so. But when you get a chance, if you can kind of review this presentation, chew on what was presented, see where you sit, and hopefully have some good conversation around teaching and learning. That's the ideal. All right. So thanks for your time. As always, office doors open. Please feel free to come down and talk, share thoughts, share concerns, and here we go, 2021. Right. Take care, everyone. Thanks.